This movie is a true story of a boy who decided to spend his easy life in a way that no one can do and no one can think about it. This is the story of a boy named Chris who, when completed his studies, his parents decided to give him a new car. But Chris tells his parents, "I don't want a car, I have my own car." After that he burns all his credit cards, ID cards, his papers, everything. The $24,000 in his account that his parents had saved for his studies. He distributes all the dollars to poor people and picks up his bag and leaves with his car. Chris didn't even know where he was going. Actually, because of his parents' little love, his heart was full of this relationship. And he wanted to leave his old identity and go to a place where no one knows him. He stops his car at one place and goes to sleep. This area was a flooded area. When he sleeps at night, there was a flood there. His car was also stuck. Now he had to leave his car there and go on his journey. But while going from there, he also removes the number plate of his car and burns all the money he had. Chris didn't have anything now. He had only his dreams, his purpose, and a bag. In his next journey, it is shown that he used to take a lift, means he used to ask for help from people and go on his journey. Because he neither had a car nor money. Now he used to sleep wherever he wanted and go wherever he wanted. He had accepted the whole world as his home and even changed his name. During his journey, he also meets a couple. This couple make him sit in their car. They make him sit and say that we are also like you. The only difference is that you travel on foot and we are in the car. We also like to see every beautiful place. Chris stays with them for a few days. From this couple, the husband tells him about his wife. That my wife has not come out of her old life yet. She still remembers her first husband, but I love my wife very much. He says that when you met us, there were still fights between us. Chris says that maybe some people don't want to forget their old life at all, and that's why they do this. The man who was telling his wife's story says that you are very smart. When Chris was living with them, their relationship was getting better. But Chris had to go ahead, he had to go to Alaska. That's why he leaves this couple here and goes on his journey. He was in California now. After that he goes to eastern South Dakota. It's been 2 months since he left home today. After coming here, Chris meets a man who had big contracts of farms here. That man used to work as a farmer. And Chris also works with him. He was enjoying his life because whatever he was doing it of his own free will. Chris also had to go from here. He asks this man for a gun, which he needed for hunting. Because Alaska, where he wanted to go, was a forest. For some reason, the police catch this man and take him away. Chris's journey up to here was also over. Chris had gone ahead from here too. He decides that he will cross a river ahead, for which he needs permission. When he goes to ask for permission, the officer says that you write your name, and when your name comes, you will be told. When he looks at his name in the list, his name was 12 years later. Chris looks and says, "What does it mean? I have to wait 12 years to cross a river?" The officer says, yes. Chris leaves from there. He decides that he will cross the river without permission and had crossed the river. He meets a couple there. They tell him that you can cross this river and go to Mexico. But now the police were also behind him, but he reaches Mexico. To reach here, he had faced a lot of trouble. He even stayed in a cave, and now he reached the city, but feeling suffocated in here, so he starts his further journey. He was now traveling more on trains. But he did not even have money, so now he takes the help of a truck. One day the railway police catch him and beat him a lot. Chris now started his journey again by asking for help from people. He meets the same old couple whom he met first on his journey. Here, Chris meets a girl whose name was Chrissy, and she started liking Chris. But Chris did not like her because he wanted to go on his journey ahead and wanted to go to Alaska. After some time, he leaves for his journey. He reaches a city and sets up his camp. After staying in that camp for a few days, he meets an old man who was a retired officer. But he also used to do leather work. When that old man hears Chris's story, he likes his story a lot. He started spending most of his time with Chris. That old man says that in a car accident, my whole family died and I am all alone. Chris now learns leather work with him. He makes a belt for himself in which he makes everything for his journey. After staying here for 2 months, Chris decides that he will now go to Alaska. Because he was not far from there, but that old man did not want Chris to go from here. He says, "You stay with me, stay as my son." Chris says that I respect your words very much, but I have to go to Alaska. When I come back, then we will talk about it. He had now left there too. A man gives him a lift and drops him to the border of Alaska, and at the same time, he also gives him shoes. He says that this will not make your feet wet. Finally, Chris had reached Alaska. When he comes far, he hangs his cap on a branch of a tree. He was doing this because he had to cross a river ahead. So that when he came back, he could find out the way that he had crossed the river from here. He now crosses the river and sets up his camp there. There was only snow in Alaska, and far away, there was no sign of any human being. He also hunted small to stay here and also had a gun which he had kept to hunt. Then he sees a bus in which there was a bed to sleep and things to light a fire. He had now found a place to stay. Chris had started living there after cleaning that bus well. He hunted and fed himself, and now Chris was living the life he wanted to live. Chris had a good habit that he was very fond of reading and writing. Wherever he visited till today, he used to write the quality of that place in his book. So that he could always remember those moments in his life. In the beginning, he spent a few days in Alaska well, but now slowly he was running out of food and drink. That's why he had reduced his food and drink, because of which he was losing weight as well. The belt he was wearing, which he had made himself, he used to make a hole in it again and again to wear it. His food was running out. That's why now he thinks that he will hunt a big animal and run it for many days. But as he had thought, nothing like that happens. The meat of the animal he hunt gets rotten and there were insects in it. He had understood one thing here, that no one can go beyond nature. Chris was tired of such a life now. He had realized that the real happiness is that which is shared with the loved ones. Now when he decides to go back, he sees that the river he had crossed was now huge and deep. He could not cross it now. When he tries to cross that river, he falls and was about to die, but he was saved. After that, he comes back in his car and starts spending his day again. Chris did not have any food and drink. He now starts eating wild plants, and he also had a book about it, because you cannot eat every plant in the forest. One day he eats a poisonous plant, and the poison had spread all over his body. He did not have the courage to find food for himself, and it had been 100 days since he had been in Alaska. He did what he wanted to do in his life, but now he had become very weak, but still he wrote his thoughts. He writes in his last days, happiness is only real when shared, means happiness is what you share with others. When he realizes that this is the last time of his life, he lies down in his sleeping bag. He remembers his parents and writes one last note in the world. In which it was written, I had have a happy life and thank the Lord goodbye, and may God bless all. Means I lived a happy life, and for this, thank God and goodbye to everyone. After it, he dies. From this whole story of Chris, we get the lesson that you must live your life as per your will. But there is no life without your loved ones, especially without parents. Everyone makes some or the other mistake in their life, but because of our mistakes, we cannot leave anyone forever. After all, the mistake's name is a mistake. So always take care of your loved ones for this reason, and never think of leaving them. In Chris's story, the last note shown was only a part of this story, but in reality, he had written about his life. I need help, I am very weak and very close to my death, I am completely alone. This is not a joke, please save me, I have opened every way of my life, and now, in this evening, I am here. Thank you, Chris McCandle. Here, Chris's story ends.